There is a Hasidic story from Pesichia about one of their masters, a man who was so revered that in the end his title became HaYehudi HaKodesh, the Holy Jew. And the Yehudi HaKodesh was known for his mastery of all things the shofar, not as a musical instrument or even as a ritual object, but as a spiritual tool. To the Yehudi HaKodesh, the shofar was the key that opened up the gate of heaven, the secret of God's court, and the heart of every human being. And so every single Rosh Hashanah, before the holiday began, he would invite his most talented students who knew how to blow the shofar, and he would come and say, "Come on in. I will tell you my great secrets, my hidden kavanot, my special prayers that need to be said before and during and after the shofar is sounded." And these hidden kavanot were cosmic riddles that he had worked out over the course of his year of study, or arguments for the forgiveness and the innocence of the Jewish people, or divine promises that he had portended were meant to be fulfilled in the year to come. And so to be taught these things was considered a high honor, but to be given the honor of to be the one to blow the shofar while praying them, that was the highest honor any student could receive. And so one year, his prize student, Rabbi Simcha Bunim, said, "I want to be one of those guys. I want to be let in on the big old divine secrets. I deserve it. After all, why not me? I'm smart, I'm talented, I'm driven, I'm promising. How important can it possibly be that I don't know how to blow the shofar?" Couldn't be that important. Certainly not. And so, that year, Rabbi Simcha Bunim secretly entered into the study of his master along with the other great virtuoso shofar blowers of his community. And the Yehudi HaKodesh begins to teach them, and Rabbi Simcha Bunim is carefully taking down all the notes piece by piece, dedicating them to memory. And he's like, okay, and so when he finishes, there's going to be big cheering, there's going to be big kol hakavods and claps, and he's done teaching, and it's quiet. Why is it so quiet? And the dread begins to fall upon him, and sure enough, he looks up, and everyone is looking at him because he has been selected to be the one to blow the shofar. What was that question he'd asked? How important could it possibly be to know how to blow the shofar before you go to the graduate level seminar on shofar blowing and all of its secrets? Oh no. Shamefaced, the rabbi had to admit not only to his master but to all of his fellow students that he couldn't do it. He lacked the skill. He didn't know how to make the shofar make a single note, let alone how to blow it while doing all of this complicated internal spiritual geography. And his teacher said to him, "Then why did you come in here without permission? Why did you do this?" And his answer is the following: Matz'anu shegam Moshe Rabbeinu asukach. Moses did it too. Because this is what Moshe Rabbeinu, our teacher Moses, did as well. And to prove his point, Rabbi Simcha Bunim cites this week's Torah portion, Shemot. First, Moses asked God, "What is your name, and what will I say to them?" And only after he has learned this all-important primordial secret, only after he has been called to his message, only after he has been tasked with the great task of freeing the Jewish people, does he say to God, "By the way, I am not a man of words. Never have been. Do you not know that I am slow of speech and slow of tongue?" This Hasidic story contradicts the way that most of us live our lives. Most of us, when we are given the opportunity to do something that interests us, that would benefit us, that we would like to be involved in, and yet we also know we are massively underqualified to do it, make the very wise and sensible choice not to do it. If you've ever brought a child to the front of a plane, and the pilot has ever opened the door and said, "Come on in," little one, wouldn't you like to see how I fly the aircraft? You would not then say, child, would you be interested in flying said aircraft? Most of us, even young children, are sensible creatures. We know that when we are underqualified to do a thing, we should not go and do that thing. We want to do the thing. We are afraid to do the thing. We do not do the thing, says Rabbi Mark Asher Goodman. And the rabbi compares this ancient parable to another more modern one, say of a student, someone who hasn't even yet taken algebra, who sits down at a graduate level class in astrophysics. And what is supposed to happen to them when they're called on and asked to answer a question from the front of the room? Should they be forced to admit their lack of skill? Should they be exposed as a fraud who didn't really belong? How dare you enter into this space without permission? Or, as the Hasidic story dares us, do you take this moment to have the same kind of character building and chutzpahdik of Moses? When Rabbi Simcha Bunim got caught, he said, well, Moses did it. You know, Moses encounters God in the burning bush. Moses has a conversation with the master of all the worlds. And in that moment, Moses has the gall to say, by the way, God, why don't you teach me your name? Why don't you tell me the ineffable name of God? The power of God's name is so great that we can't even pronounce it. And yet, Moses is a shepherd. He's not a negotiator. He's not a moderator. He's not an arbitrator. He's not a judge. He's not even good at public speaking, and he knows it. But still, chutzpahdik, he asks for it. He asks for it in this 101 in a billion lifetimes anyways. And only after he gets the tool to do the job does he say to the boss, by the way, you know, this stutter, you may have heard it. Maybe you should get someone else. And so this is why many of our Hasidic masters are viewed as transgressive. It's why they're viewed as disruptors, because conventional wisdom says that Moses first should have told God, by the way, you know I'm not qualified to do this job, right? And then only afterwards, when God says, I'm choosing you anyways, should Moses go and say, okay, well then teach me your secret name so that I can prove to all the Israelites that I'm for real. But in fact, the Torah tells us that Moses does it the opposite way. And so to return to that quote from Rabbi Goodman, we want to do the thing, we are afraid of doing the thing, we ultimately do not do the thing. He continues and he says, but we should do the thing. Moses looks before he leaps. Moses is in fact the first one who fakes it until he makes it. Faking it until you make it is usually described about maybe the first year in a job or some short thing that you are learning, or sometimes it's about overcoming something like grief in a reality of loss until you can find your way back to normality. Right now, I think the entire Jewish world is kind of just faking it until we make it. We are living in deeply unprecedented times that bluntly go beyond our expertise. They go beyond our qualified experiences. Most of us don't have this kind of trauma on our CV. Anti-Semitism is surging in our country. And things that we thought were impossible, like firebombing a deli in the streets of Toronto, are a reality. And Israel is at war with Hamas, and that war has no structure and it has no border, and it grows and it changes every single day, and it opens up a new front every single day. And sometimes that front is literal, and sometimes that front is social or relational. And there are institutions that once had the trust of the Jewish community, and they've lost it. And there are allies that we believed in who never arrived. And there are relationships somehow, surprisingly and excitingly, that we are building that we never really expected either. And in a precedented time, we would turn to an expert who could tell us what has happened and what is coming and who we can trust, and who we should listen to, and who we should ignore. But it seems really honestly and truthfully that we are living in unprecedented times, and that there aren't any real experts at this moment who can answer all of our questions. At least that's something our best and brightest are united on answering. Their answer has been, when will things get better? We don't know. Will things get worse? We also don't know. But that's not unique, actually. There are plenty of experts in Jewish history, but there are very few experts in Jewish history in the moment that it is happening. There's only Jews. There's only us. And we are all in this together. And we, like Rabbi Simcha Bunim and like Moses, unfortunately cannot wait to become experts. Sometimes we can't even wait to get a seemingly vital skill, like blowing a shofar, before going into your PhD on shofar blowing. And yet, how inspiring is it to see so many good people going out and doing so much, even though they would never claim to be experts in the field. That's what so many of our Jewish people are doing each and every day. In Israel, in Canada, in all the lands that you find us. And together, we just have to keep going, and keep doing, and keep defending, and keep living, and keep hoping, and breathing, and believing. In a time just like all those other times, when the future was uncertain, and there were no experts. Because in a time when there are no experts, the Jewish people will just need to figure out the answers in the middle of it, and find our way through, just like we always have. Well, thank God, then, that we have excellent company in each other. Shabbat Shalom.